let's go. Two more teams here. Cincinnati Bengals. Also some fascinating decisions here. They're in this kind of stars and scrubs world and figuring out how to keep their stars together and their stars happy. You've talked a lot about Joe Burrow continuing to lobby for Tee Higgins to stay. Trey Hendrickson, they got to figure him out. He's the one guy that you could depend on last year on that defense. Everything else was rough, man. So Joe Burrow, they got to sign Jamar Chase soon. You got to figure out Tee Higgins. You got to figure out Trey Hendrickson. And as of record time, Jermaine Pratt is asking for a trade. I've just shipped him off to the Colts, essentially, where Lou Anarumo is the new defensive coordinator. So I'm going to send Jermaine Pratt to the Colts for a draft pick. Let's just take care of that. And let's figure out how we're going to keep all of our stars together and happy in Cincinnati.
This is probably by far the most perilous pre-record team we could be talking about, because any and all of these moves could be done by the time this game or this episode goes out. It is fascinating because we've talked about this before, like Joe Burrow's public lobbying of the Bengals to basically spend money, right? Like the Bengals have been widely regarded for years as a cheap franchise, a team that does not like spending money. And yet they have broken their previous MO for Joe Burrow in several ways already, right? Since he's gotten here in a way that they didn't do. I mean, they drafted Carson Palmer #1 overall as well, right? Carson Palmer was like, the Joe Burrow of his time, the early 2000s, sort of. But like in terms of like, he's the guy. You find a franchise quarterback, let's go. And they didn't do that stuff for Palmer, but they've already broken, the way they do contracts for Burrow. They've built a dome to practice in, a bubble, so you're not practicing out on a field under an overpass with a train going by you in freezing sleet, in the winter. You can actually be inside. They've overhauled, the stadium. They're busy building upgrades left, right, and center. So, okay, it would be one more step, but breaking their contract structures again for Tee Higgins, Jamar Chase, Trey Hendrickson, whatever, it would, it's just one more. Like Burrow is forcing you to modernize. You might as well go the whole way and keep the good players in the building.
I'm of the mind, like, just get it done. So, like, the sooner you have the big money out of the way, then you can start focusing on the issues, right? The defensive line issues, the defense overall, the offensive line depth, all these other things that you need to sort out. Just get the Jamar Chase deal done. And the sooner you do it, you know where the money is, you know where you can move it, you know where the flexibility is. You move Burrow's money around, right? That's the benefit of having the long-term quarterback contract is it's there and you know how you can manipulate the money to create immediate cap space and do what you have to do. I think the Tee Higgins thing is trickier because I think they're a force, man. Like, they are a force to be reckoned with when it is Burrow, Chase, and Higgins. They're such a force that they could take one of the worst defenses in the NFL and almost sneak into the playoffs, right? They're such a force that they set such a deep hole for themselves. They needed 12 things to happen down the stretch, and 11 of them happened, and one more thing could have happened, and they were going to go into the playoffs and have a chance to upset Buffalo because that offense is that good. So keeping that nucleus together is really appealing. It's really appealing, but it's going to take shrewd cap management to have the money sorted in a way that you can have Burrow, Chase, and Higgins. And also, Trey Hendrickson in his prime, an elite pass rusher, top 5 type of pass rusher. You don't get those guys often. Just make it all. I'm of the mind you just kind of make it all work, make it all happen, and then you have to draft well. And then you have to draft well to complement it, or else you're going to be another 9-win team on the fringe of the playoffs.
I do wonder at the moment, I wonder if Chase's contract is actually the biggest stumbling block right now. Not that they won't get that one done, but that he's effectively, at this point, like I think all of them now understand that there's quite a lot of leverage here. I wonder if Chase is looking at this and saying, like, his number is just so crazy right now. Like, I've heard talks that he's looking for $40 million a year based off.
Sorry, really quick. The top receiver cornerbacks receiver contracts are up around 35. Like, if you just got him at 35 before Myles Garrett makes his 40, before Micah Parsons probably makes 40, before you start looking around and saying who's got the biggest non-QB contract in NFL history, and Jamar Chase wants to have the biggest non-quarterback contract. Like get him at 35 if he'll do it, unless maybe he does want the 40 right away.
Yeah, and it's and look, the cap's going to explode in a couple of years when TV deals are up again and blah blah blah. It always goes up, and these are never as bad as they look when you sign them. But Justin Jefferson effectively is the same kind of deal, but a year in advance, right? Jefferson's a year ahead of Chase. He just signed his monster deal, same school. He's up around 35 million. The assumption was that Chase was going to be like, let's just give me the Justin Jefferson deal with a couple of dollars on top so that I can be the number one guy and everybody's happy. But if he's actually like, no, I want Justin Jefferson's deal and I want to jump, that's tricky for a team that doesn't like to spend money. Like that's a potential major stumbling block. So yeah, like if you can get Jeff or Chase for anything like $35 million a year, get it locked in ASAP so you can work on everything else. But if he's really like heels dug in at 40, that's a problem that's going to take some time to try and find middle ground, because I think they're probably quite far away if that's the case. But if you end up having to sink $40 million a year or something like that into Jamar Chase, I still think it's a deal you should do. And eventually, 2 or 3 years' time, that deal will look fine. But right now, that would, I think, create a problem with the other contracts, getting them locked in.
Where do you stand with Higgins generally? I mean, are you just saying tag him? I mean, I don't see them going long term with Higgins. I think they're just going to try to stretch it out as far as possible.
So a second tag is $26 million, I think, for this year, because they're already franchise tagged him, right? So a second tag is like 26, which puts him in the range of, in terms of APY of like where Cooper Kupp is based off his contract that he signed years ago and is still going. Devontae Smith, who's a number 2, like that's precedent, right? Those types of guys, right? So it's not terrible. I think that's definitely a viable option if they want to do that. It's obviously fully guaranteed money this year. I honestly think though, like I've said this somewhere else before, like if you were building a roster from scratch, right? Blank sheet of paper, we have the total salary cap space. We've talked about it before. You have 5 or 6 big contracts that you can hand out, and then you got to basically stitch the roster together with the remaining money, right? Those 5 or 6 contracts, if you're starting from a blank sheet of paper, are going to go to your quarterback, your wide receiver 1, your best pass rusher, probably your best cornerback, and maybe your best offensive tackle, right? That's 5. That would be the first 5 spots I would pick off for my big contracts. But you're not starting from a blank sheet of paper, right? They already have one of those deals in Burrow. Hendrickson, your best pass rusher, is another one that's looking for the money, so that makes sense. Chase, your best wide receiver, is looking for the money, so that makes sense. Higgins, wide receiver 2. That on a blank sheet of paper, optimal strategy is probably not one of the 5, but it is one of the top 8 positions that are coming up for contract that you need to make a decision on now. So would I, in an optimal world, want that money dedicated to like offensive tackle 1 or cornerback 1? Yeah, but that's not the decision right now. Like I'm not debating, do I pay Tee Higgins or do I pay my elite number 1 corner who's available? That's not the option. It's like, do I pay Tee Higgins or just keep the money? Because Tee Higgins is going to leave. In that scenario, I keep Tee Higgins.
And Higgins is the number 2 receiver for the Bengals, but he's wide receiver 1 on another, I don't know, 16 to 18 teams around the NFL, maybe more. So it's not like the great Corey Davis. That good. I know you're not big on Higgins for whatever reason. I think he's legit. And I think he looked like a wide receiver 1 when Chase got hurt a couple years ago. Higgins does have the durability. He has the durability questions, absolutely. But this isn't like Corey Davis. Remember, I loved Corey Davis coming out, but the reality was Corey Davis was the quintessential number 2 receiver in the NFL, right? You don't want him having more than 10 or 12 targets a game, or, you're not going to feed him high volume. But when he's opposite A.J. Brown, he could do some damage, win at the intermediate level, whatever. Tee Higgins is way better than that. He's way better than the quintessential number 2. I think he's better than a Jacoby Myers or a Corey Davis, right? Those guys that currently make $13 to $18 million a year. He's a wide receiver 1 for at least half the league, we'll say. And so you have a chance to have 2 of those guys. You don't think so? He's not wide receiver 1 for half the league. Give me the teams where he's not wide receiver 1.
I mean, look, I just think he's one of the better wide receiver 2s in the NFL. But like, is he better than Devontae Smith? Is he better than, guys like that? I don't know that that's true. It doesn't really matter. The point being, he's a high-end wide receiver 2, and that's enough to make the case that you can pay him big money.
Yeah, so I'm with you. Like, I just make it all work. So I'm going to pay all the guys as a starting point. We're going to pay all the guys, and then all of them. We're going to cut my friend Jermaine Burton. That's probably might happen by the time we're recording this. Who knows? Probably got to get rid of him.
That's your fault individually.
Oh, because I didn't babysit him?
Yes. You knew exactly what the problem was, and you did not keep him on the straight and narrow.
Guy lives 5 minutes from me down the street, and I could have helped him.
This is a personal
I tried. I thought the preseason hug it out when I called him my wide receiver 4 was going to help him lead him down the right path during the season here.
No.
So probably got to get rid of Burton. Honestly, that's part of what makes the Higgins decision. Like if he did keep his head on straight, Burton, and he just let his talent play out, that's why I called it such an important draft pick. Not because it was definitely going to hit, but it was, if it hit, it would have let them move on from Higgins, right? Like if Burton played up to his talent, Sam, you might say, yeah, let Tee Higgins walk. We have Jermaine Burton. He's a first-round caliber receiver. We don't need Tee Higgins. But because Burton was, not showing up to practice and all the off-field stuff that he had, now you're kind of stuck with, we have to probably figure out Tee Higgins.
Or if we'd seen, this big step forward in Princeton, Yoshivas, which again didn't really happen. Like I know he had some solid touchdown numbers and he made some clutch catches, but like he didn't take the big step where you're like, okay, he's ready to be wide receiver 2 in this offense. So both of the two options that could have made Tee Higgins expendable didn't put their hand up for that kind of case. So again, you're back to like your decision is not Tee Higgins versus spending that money on a tackle or a cornerback. It's like Tee Higgins or no Tee Higgins. And in that case, like if the only debate is money, pay the man.
Yeah. All right. So pay all the guys. Probably got to get rid of Burton. I love the pass rush was just inept last year outside of Trey Hendrickson. Massive regression from Sam Hubbard on the other side. They just did not have anybody who could get after the quarterback. I think this draft at pick 17, they've been paired with Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss quite a bit as a defensive tackle. The Mike Green, James Pierce, edge rushers, Nick Scourton, whoever it might be, just get one of those guys at 17. Pay Trey Hendrickson, get another rookie opposite them. Miles Murphy didn't really take that step forward that they were hoping. I mean, that's why it's not a strategy to just like draft the best, draft well, make sure you draft well. But we said a couple years ago, the Bengals tried to draft positions of need where they could be cheap for a couple of years so they could pay these other stars. But when Miles Murphy doesn't develop and Amarius Mims has his struggles as a rookie at right tackle, it's a challenge, right? You need to hit on those picks. So you got to keep swinging at those positions, those high value positions where if you're going to pay all these stars, you're going to need a first contract edge or tackle or corner to play really well so that you can balance out the roster.
Yeah, like it's kind of unfortunate because the draft is such a crapshoot for everybody. An amazing draft can completely propel your franchise forward, immediately. Like if you just nail 7 straight draft picks, like all of a sudden you're in a completely different space than you were before. Equally, it doesn't take many misses to completely screw up an otherwise very sound plan. Like the Bengals, we've kind of ripped on them a little bit for being cheap, but like the Bengals have generally, from a process standpoint, I think done a really good job in recent years. But so many of the like sound process draft picks have missed so far. DJ, they really like future-proof that secondary, and almost all of the players that they tried to future-proof it with did not work out, right? Daxton Hill, first-round pick, was supposed to come in and future-proof the secondary. Didn't work. DJ Turner struggled, turned it around a little bit, but Miles Murphy, the first-rounder in his draft class, was supposed to be the complement to Trey Hendrickson, hasn't developed. Like, so many of these picks that would have been transformative if they'd hit on them just didn't. And suddenly you're like, we planned this out for 2 years, and now this guy's supposed to play, and it's a problem now.
I do think the secondary has some potential. I love the way DJ Turner was playing before he got hurt. I love the way Dax Hill was playing before he got hurt. Cam Taylor-Britt was in and out of the lineup last year, getting benched or whatever. But I think Hill and Turner could be a really nice 1-2 punch in the new scheme here. They're probably going to play a little bit more man coverage with Al Golden coming in as the new defensive coordinator. So, look, they've got a lot of work to do, but I think just changing the scheme could be enough to get the most out of, say, or more out of Miles Murphy, last year's second rounder Chris Jenkins at defensive tackle, Geno Stone at safety. I think just changing the scheme could help at least get some of those players who either had potential or have previous production to get the most out of them. And then the Bengals just have to find a way to hit on the pass rushers in some of those high value positions that they're drafting.
I mean, they could stand to have one of those drafts where like the top several picks, just all defense. Like offense is in a good spot. If you pay all the guys, you're bringing all those guys back. You know, the offensive line, sure, that could use some competition or depth or whatever, but it's okay. They were one of those lines where they've done that creep back toward average things, and sometimes you're going to get low end of outcomes for the group as a unit, and that's going to create a problem. But if you assume that doesn't happen 2 years in a row, the line's probably fine. So just all defense for those draft picks.
I don't know. The line's a little tricky, man, because the creep back toward average moves of Ted Karras and Alex Kappa, they were not great last year. They're all heading to the end of their contracts. They need to invest on the O-line as well. The one, when we talk about schematic advantages, though, we've seen Burrow overcome bad offensive lines. You don't want to live in that world that much, but when you have Higgins, that's part of the Higgins thing too, right? When you have guys to throw to, it helps overcome some of the line issues. You don't want to do this every year, but this might need to be the year where you invest in defense and say, hey, Joe, go be, Magic Man again next year, and hope that the outcomes are closer to average rather than below average like they were last year on the offensive line.
Right.
All right. Solved.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.